Hi, everyone. When last we saw Joseph, some amazing things had happened. God had given Joseph the interpretation of Pharaoh's dream, and Pharaoh had made Joseph second in command of all of Egypt. Joseph, who was a former slave and a former prisoner, was now governor of Egypt. It was his job to gather in 1/5 of all the grain during those 7 years of plenty. But then those 7 years of plenty, they ended, and 7 years of famine began. And it was a terrible famine. It was very severe. And remember, it didn't just affect Egypt, but all of the countries around Egypt, including Canaan. And that was where Joseph was from and where his family still lived. Well, you know what? Those countries that were hungry, they started looking for food. Where are they going to find food in the midst of this famine? And then they heard that there was food in Egypt. And so they traveled to Egypt and they started buying food from Egypt. And Jacob, Joseph's father, also heard that there was food in Egypt. And so he called his 10 sons and he brought them to him and he said, I have heard that there is food in Egypt. I need you to travel to Egypt and buy food for our family so that we don't starve. But Jacob kept his youngest son, Benjamin, with him because he didn't want anything to happen to Benjamin. He was worried that something might happen to Benjamin in the same way that something had happened to Joseph. Well, Joseph was governor of Egypt, and as governor, whoever came from different countries had to go to Joseph first to buy the food from Egypt. And guess what? When Joseph's brothers came, they were brought before Joseph. And you know what? They didn't recognize Joseph, but Joseph, he recognized them. Well, the brothers, they didn't recognize Joseph, and you know what else happened? They bowed down with their face to the ground in front of Joseph. Does that remind you of anything? Do you remember a few weeks ago we talked about Joseph's dreams that God had given him? And Joseph had that dream where there were these sheaves of grain in the field, and Joseph's sheaf stood up, and all the other sheaves bowed down. The dream had come true. Well, Joseph's brothers didn't recognize Joseph, but it had been 20 years since they had sold him as a slave. He was only 17 when they sold him, and he had grown up now. And also, he was dressed as an Egyptian, not as a Hebrew. Joseph also was speaking to all the people in Egyptian, not in Hebrew, and he was using a translator for all of the countries that had come. And so they didn't even know that he could speak Hebrew. And you know what else? When they sold Joseph as a slave, they never in a million years dreamed that one day he would be the second highest ruler in Egypt. So they didn't recognize Joseph, but Joseph recognized them. And Joseph decided to test them. He wanted to know what kind of men they'd become. He wanted to know if they'd changed at all. And so he came up with this test, and he looked at them and he spoke harshly to them. And he said, "Where have you come from?" Well, they were scared, and they said, well, we've come from Canaan. We've just come to buy food. "I don't believe you," said Joseph. "I think you're lying. I think that you are spies, and you've come here to spy out our land and find out where we are unprotected." Joseph's brothers were terrified. How could this be happening? They said, no, we're all brothers. We are not spies. We are honest men. Joseph said, "I don't believe you. I don't believe you for a minute." And they said, "No, it's true. We are 12 brothers. We're from Canaan. Our father, he's still in Canaan with our youngest brother. We have one brother that's no more. And we are definitely not spies. We have never been spies. We're not spies." Well, Joseph looked at them and he said, "It's as I said. I do not believe you. You are spies. And the only way that you can prove to me that you are not spies is if you send one brother back to Canaan and bring back your brother, and the rest of you, I'm putting you in jail." And then he took all the brothers and put them in jail for 3 days. And on the third day, Joseph brought them out and he said, "Okay, well, you know what? I fear God, and so I've changed my mind a little. What I'm going to do is keep one of you in jail, and the rest of you can go back home and take your grain to your families because they're hungry. But hear me now. You will not get your brother out of jail, nor will you be able to buy any more food from Egypt unless you bring that brother back here and I see him and you prove to me that you're not lying. And if I find out that you're lying, then you know what? You are definitely spies and you're in big trouble. Well, Joseph's brothers were terrified. How could this be happening? They turned to each other and they said, "Oh my goodness, this is awful. This is punishment for what we did to Joseph." Do you remember how upset he was and how terrified he was and how he pleaded with us for his life and we would not listen to him? And now this is what's happening to us. Well, they spoke in front of Joseph because they didn't know Joseph could understand Hebrew. But Joseph understood every word that they said. And in fact, it made him so sad that he actually turned around and he started to cry. But he got himself under control and he turned back around and he took their brother. He took Simeon and he had him tied up. And then in front of their eyes, he had him sent to jail. So Simeon went to jail, and then Joseph ordered that their bags be filled with grain and that they had some provisions for the way home. And then Joseph secretly did one more thing. He told his men to put the money that his brothers had paid for the grain with back into their sacks, but they didn't know it. And so then Joseph's brothers got their bags, and they had to leave Simeon in jail in Egypt, and they loaded their donkeys and they went back home. And the first night when they stopped, one of the brothers, he opened his bag and he was going to get some food for his donkey, and he found his money and he went, oh no, look, my money. What has God done? He was afraid that they were going to think that he hadn't paid for his grain and that he had stolen it. He was so distraught. He's like, oh no, what is going to happen? Well, the brothers went back home, and as soon as they got home, they told Jacob all about what had happened to them. They said, oh my goodness, we went, and the governor of Egypt, he was so harsh with us, and you know what? He thinks we're spies. He thinks we're spying. Can you believe it? We said, we're not spies. We told him we're brothers, we're honest men, but he didn't believe us. And you know what else? He put Simeon in jail, and he said that the only way that we will ever buy grain again is if we prove that we're not lying, and the way to prove that is by bringing our youngest brother, Benjamin, back with us next time we go. And then all the brothers, they opened up their sacks, and you know what they found? Each of them found the money that they had paid for the grain with. And they were so upset. They were like, oh no, they're going to think that we stole it. This is so terrible. We cannot believe that this has happened. And they looked in every single bag, and it was all the same. All of their money had been returned. What were they going to do? Jacob looked at them and he said, What is going on? How can you do this to me? You're going to deprive me of all my children. He said, Joseph is no more, and then Simeon is in jail, and you want to take Benjamin with you and go back? No way. There is no way that you are taking Benjamin back to Egypt with you. And Reuben, the oldest brother, he came up to them and he said to Jacob, and he said, I promise you, I promise that nothing will happen to Benjamin. I will keep him safe. I guarantee it. But Jacob said, no, there's no way you're taking Benjamin. This is a terrible idea. If anything happens to him, it will kill me. Absolutely not. And so we're going to leave Simeon in jail, not knowing what's going to happen to him. Will Jacob and Joseph ever see each other again? Will Joseph's brothers ever realize that he was the governor that they spoke with? What's going to happen? Well, join us next week to find out. Have a good week. Bye.